From Columbia, in high definition, this is WIS News 10 Awareness.
Just 2 days until polls open up for the general election. Everything you need to know leading up to November 4th. Plus, you could be at risk for kidney failure and not even know it. How to prevent kidney disease and treatment options if you're fighting it. Thank you for joining us for Awareness. I'm your host, Megan Norman. Election day is on Tuesday. Polls will open up at 7 a.m. for many statewide and local races. Will you take advantage of your right to vote? Well, you certainly should. Here with more on what you need to know before going to the polls is Martha Robley, president of the League of Women Voters of the Columbia area, and Rosalind Glenn, the social action chair for the Richland County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you, ladies, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for asking us.
Now, let's start with the overall mission and target audience of the League of Women Voters and then Delta Sigma Theta's program.
The League is a nonpartisan, grassroots political organization that focuses on encouraging informed and active participation in our government. We really have two main focuses, which is voter services as well as public policy and advocacy.
And Delta Sigma Theta is an organization of college-educated women committed to the constructive development of our members and to public service. We do that under a 5 programmatic thrust, one of them being political awareness and involvement. And so we encourage active participation in the political process because we know and believe that it definitely impacts us as individuals.
Right, and I suppose we should start with some of the history leading up into why these organizations both are so important, because for many years, women and African Americans were denied the right to vote.
That's correct. In fact, the League of Women Voters was proposed by Carrie Chapman Catt, who was then the president of the women's suffrage movement in the United States. And it came in conjunction with the passing of the 19th Amendment, which was when it was ratified by the 36 states in August of 1920. And that gave all women, including African American women, the right to vote.
But still, it was a challenge for African Americans. Most African Americans really not getting that full right until after the Civil Rights Movement.
Absolutely, and one of the things that our sorority kind of encourages is active participation for all African Americans because of the struggles that we had to go through in order to get the right to vote, and not just for women, but for men as well. And so we feel very strongly about participating in the process, being informed to participate in the process.
Do you both still see some barriers or challenges to getting people either interested or registered or all the above?
Yes, we do, and I actually like to take this opportunity. I think most recently it's been because, excuse me, of the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Shelby, which effectively gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And what that's allowed to do is what we've seen is a flurry of activity by many of a lot of the states, a dozen or so, including South Carolina, passing and enacting laws that the League of Women Voters views as restrictions on our voting rights. An example of that is the photo ID rule here in South Carolina, but in other states is also cutting back on the days for early voting, cutting back on availability of absentee voting, redrawing district lines, changing precincts, all of these kinds of things. Yes.
Well, let's talk about Tuesday and what people need to know and bring with them when they go to the polls.
There's, you need, under the South Carolina photo ID rule, you need 1 of 5 photo identifications. That can be your current South Carolina DMV driver's license, and it does need to be current. If it's expired, can't use it. If you do not have a driver's license, then you can also go to the DMV and get an ID. Again, it has to be a South Carolina ID and has to be current. You can get a photo, a voter registration card with your photo on it. You can use your U.S. passport or a federal military ID. But it's also important to note that if you do not have one of these photo identifications, you can still vote. You can vote what is called a provisional ballot, and you sign an affidavit that says that you have a reasonable impediment. And there's a number of examples of that, but it can include things like you do not have a birth certificate, lack of transportation, your work prevents you. But if it was simply that you just forgot to bring your photo ID in, you can still vote a provisional ballot, but you will have to go to your county election board within 1 or 2 days to present that photo ID.
Now, Rosalind, what would you say to people out there who maybe are uninterested, or how would you encourage them to take advantage of their right to vote?
I think we all need to understand that voting is more than just voting. It determines the schools your children go to, what kind of funding. It has such an impact on everything we do because the people that we send to represent us do that, and we need to make sure that they're representing all of our interests and making sure that they're including everybody's interest. And so it's critical, in particular in this state of South Carolina, it is very critical that we all take opportunity to exercise our right to vote, and to do that being made aware, being engaged in the process.
Right. And we have several websites that you can go to with more information on your precincts, on candidates, a variety of other information.
You can actually get a sample ballot on those websites as well. And that would be another thing I would recommend people do, is be prepared before you actually go into the booth.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for being with us.
Thank
Thank you for having us.
Still to come on Awareness.
Blood pressure right now is 220/160. He said, you literally are a walking stroke. So I was at stage 5 before I even knew anything about my kidney failure.
He ignored the warning signs and put his health at risk. What you need to know about chronic kidney disease. But first, here's a look at the candidates for most of the major statewide races. Welcome back to Awareness. Imagine gradually losing the function of vital organs in your body and being dependent on a machine to keep you alive. That's a reality for close to 600,000 people in our state who have chronic kidney disease. It's a condition that can be prevented in most cases, but you need to know your risk. One man ignored the warning signs. Everett German had no family history of kidney disease, but he had a habit of not eating right, not exercising enough, and no regular checkups, also known as a perfect storm.
Was just having really bad headaches and blurred vision in my eyesight, and kind of just thought maybe it was just time that I needed glasses.
It was far more serious than needing glasses. When German finally went to the doctor, it was a life or death decision. His blood pressure was sky high.
He goes, your blood pressure right now is 220/160. He said, you literally are a walking stroke. And after some tests, that's when they discovered that I had, at that time, only 12% functioning left in my kidney. So I was at stage 5 before I even knew anything about, my kidney failure.
It's your kidney's main job to remove waste and excess fluid from your body. If this is not happening properly, doctors say you may feel fatigue, muscle cramps, swelling, and more. But kidney disease does not always have symptoms, so you need to know your risk.
The two biggest causes of kidney failure are diabetes and high blood pressure.
Nazisa Mutinga is a nephrologist.
To a large extent, it can be prevented. Diabetes is a preventable illness, and that's why we really must focus on screening the appropriate people and then making sure they have good follow-up and treatment.
Dr. Mutinga says blood and urine tests tell doctors how well your kidneys are functioning. There are 5 stages of kidney disease, and once you get to limited kidney function around stages 4 or 5, Dr. Mutinga recommends talking about treatment options. Now, early stages can be managed with medication, but catching it before it's progressed can be life-saving.
They just always say, it won't happen to me, it can't happen to me. I work out all the time, I eat proper, and it may decrease your chances, but yeah, you just can't be stubborn when it comes to your health. You only get one life, you only get, necessarily one body. You got to take care of it.
Now, Everett German's story is the first in a whole series we're doing on kidney disease. He did eventually get a life-saving transplant, and we'll get more into his journey and others in later stories. But joining me now is Dr. David Schur, a nephrologist with Columbia Nephrology Associates, and Henry Well, Program Director for the South Carolina area of the National Kidney Foundation. Thank you both for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Let's talk right away about risk factors for kidney disease.
The two biggest risk factors are hypertension and diabetes, and the majority of our patients who are referred to us for kidney dysfunction are suffering from one of those two, if not both of those ailments.
And now, what do you tell your patients in terms of prevention for not even getting to this point of hypertension and diabetes?
Well, awareness, early recognition, following with a primary care provider will be really important in helping to screen patients for high blood pressure and diabetes, and then knowing about risk factors such as family history. There's certain preponderance for hypertension and diabetes in many families, and in addition, patients tend to know when their family members have those risk factors.
Now, as a nephrologist, when do you typically start to see patients? Is it when they have the onset of diabetes and hypertension, or is it later on?
It's in both settings, but usually later on. We are trying to raise awareness, as you are here in this segment, so that patients who may not be seeing physicians yearly for annual screening and regular routine physician's appointments start to become aware of the possibility for renal dysfunction, because unfortunately it's silent, and patients only start to feel symptoms when they're at the bitter end of kidney function.
Now, there are a variety of stages of kidney disease, correct? When do you start recommending treatment options?
We usually start to see patients in a middle stage, which we call stage 3 of kidney dysfunction. We start to discuss the options of transplant and dialysis management, usually in when they're a little bit more advanced in stage 4, but it's still, we start to look at this, you know, sometimes a year, if not longer, in advance of probably needing dialysis.
Right. And then do you also talk to them about transplantation and some of the other options that may happen down the road?
Absolutely. It's right up front there. We are discussing transplant with patients and referral centers and try to get everybody we see in later stages of kidney dysfunction referred to a transplant center.
Right. Now, Henry, Everett is a transplant recipient, just one of our features in this series. Let's talk a little bit more about the rest of the series. What can we expect to see?
Well, we're gonna have a renal dietitian who's going to do a piece on how to eat healthy while you're on dialysis. A renal-friendly diet can be very, very hard to follow, but the focus of that segment is hopefully to just clear up some misconceptions and all that other kind of good stuff. We're also going to hear more from Everett about the transplant process. We have one transplant center in South Carolina, but many people don't know you can be listed on a transplant list in each state. So if you live here in Columbia, you could be on the MUSC list, the Georgia Regent list in Augusta, and the Carolinas Medicals in Charlotte. And the very last series, we're going to have a phone bank that we talked about, where you can call us up with any kind of questions you have about chronic kidney disease, or if you want to get involved. We're talking a lot about dialysis and transplantation, but there's a lot of stuff you can do to prevent from getting to stage 3 or stage 4. And that's kind of what our big push is about, the prevention and the early detection to stay away from transplant and dialysis.
Now, Dr. Schur, is it true that African Americans are at a heightened risk of developing kidney disease or going into kidney failure?
It's true, and there are both genetic and environmental reasons for that. Certainly, and unfortunately, diabetes and hypertension are more represented in the African American community, and genetic underpinnings are being revealed that show that there are genetic reasons as well why African Americans are more heavily represented.
Right. And are there cases where other conditions, other medical conditions can arise as a result of having kidney disease?
Well, that's true. Unfortunately, well, the kidneys manage a great deal of body systems for us, including red blood cell production and body fluid management. So patients who do have kidney deterioration start to see other things go wrong over time, things that are often taken for granted.
Right. And Henry, finally, quickly, resources for people.
You can If you have more information or any kind of question, say your aunt was on dialysis and you're not sure if you're at risk, you can call our patient hotline, which is 1-855-NKF-CARES, or visit our website, kidney.org. There is a wealth of information. There's actually a quiz you can take to determine if you're at risk. And
Good information out there.
Yes, great information.
All right, thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
When awareness returns, a cross-country chain of kidney donors helps to save the life of a Midlands man. Hear his story up next. Welcome back to Awareness. More than 100,000 people are waiting on a kidney transplant right now. Adrian Silva had a transplant in January, and it happened through a new cross-country exchange program. Here's Adrian and his wife, Patty. Adrian, you are a transplant recipient.
Yes.
And this is because you had kidney failure a couple of years back. How did you get diagnosed with chronic kidney disease?
Through high blood pressure and
diabetes.
Diabetes.
And did your doctor give you any preventative steps to avoid kidney failure, or what were you told before you got that diagnosis?
That I should lose weight and take better care of myself.
And was that something that was kind of hard to do, kind of a challenge?
No, I did end up losing the weight, but I still continue to go downhill.
Right.
And so that led me to ending up on dialysis.
Can you explain to me and to viewers what it was like to be on dialysis, how time-consuming and the impact it had on your life?
Well, it impacted my life tremendously. It affected doing family things with my wife and kids, and Financially, I had to stop working because I was so tired after being on dialysis for 4.5 hours for three days a week, and it was very tiresome.
When you switched to the at-home dialysis, was that a little bit easier on your family life and on your body at all, or?
Not necessarily, because I had to be hooked up to the machine every night. You know, at a certain time, I had to be on for about 10 hours a night. So that prevented me from doing a lot of things.
And Patty, you've been by his side from day one, helping him through this process. What has the diagnosis and the treatment done in terms of the impact on your family?
Well, we used to vacation a lot. Financially, we went from 2 incomes to 1 income. We could not vacation. If we had to vacation, we had to give them several weeks' notice so he could go to different states and do dialysis. Or we did take a cruise and he went and did dialysis in the Bahamas. But he just couldn't be with us. You know, when we were in the Bahamas, they picked him up. They took him to the dialysis center while the kids and I did activities during the day, and then he met us afterwards. So he was always tired.
I was going to say the fatigue, I imagine, would set in. So when your kids wanted to play, you couldn't.
No, I couldn't. After dialysis, all I wanted to do was go home and lay down because I was so drained.
Right. And so how many years were you on dialysis?
2.5 years.
Okay, that's a pretty long time to have that kind of strain on your life.
Yes, but I am very lucky. There's a lot of people on dialysis that are still on dialysis that, you know, it bothers me knowing that I was able to receive a kidney and they're still going through that process.
It bothers you?
Oh yeah, it bothers me. I still go visit them sometimes.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Help keep their spirits up? Just talk to them?
I try to, yeah, just talk to them.
Yeah.
Let them know how I'm doing and see how they're doing.
What was the atmosphere like when you were in the centers?
Yeah, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't a pretty sight.
It was depressing, wasn't it?
Very depressing. There were a few amputees, and I would look around and say, that's going to be me one day. I didn't think I would ever not have to do dialysis.
But it turned out that you didn't have to do it for the rest of your life because you got a life-saving transplant. Tell me a little bit about how that happened.
We actually put a few messages on social media, and we got quite a few responses back. All of a sudden, my neighbor became
she was invested in trying to
a positive
to help
donor.
You. Right.
Yes, she was very invested, unbeknownst to our family.
So it sounds like she just has a really big heart and wanted to help.
Yes.
So she was a match, but then turns out just several hours before your scheduled transplant, she wasn't a match.
Right.
So then what happened after that?
To me, it was basically back to the drawing board. You know,
Yeah.
we try to start more networking and see if there was somebody willing to donate a kidney.
But Patty, there was almost like a chain reaction of events, almost literally, that happened.
Right. Cindy said she wasn't going to give up on us, and MUSC started a donor exchange program, which meant that she would still be Adrian's donor, but she would give her kidney to somebody else, and in exchange, he would get somebody else's kidney. And in January, Adrian got a call to say that there was a match, that a Good Samaritan in San Francisco was donating his kidney, and he was Adrian's match. And then there was 8 other people in the United States over that one Good Samaritan donor that got kidneys all over the United States. And Cindy's kidney went to somebody in Seattle, Washington.
So Sydney kind of started the
Yes.
chain, and almost a dozen other people's lives were saved because of this
Absolutely.
chain
Yes, that's true.
of kidney transplants. That is awesome. So tell me about this match. Did you meet him?
Oh yes, yeah.
His name is Jerry, and he's a marathon runner, and he lives in Durham, California, and he ran a double marathon in July, and my family, our 2 kids, and Adrian and I flew out to San Francisco and watched him run 54 miles in the
This
San
is
Francisco
after donating
Yep.
his kidney.
in January, and in July he ran 54 miles, a double
We
marathon.
flew over to California to support him in his marathon and to meet him and his family. And
How did that feel to see your donor face to face, the kidney inside of you, the original owner?
Well, what he called me his brother from another mother.
Yeah.
But that was good.
Yeah, so really grateful, obviously.
yeah.
Well, Adrian and Patty, thank you for sharing your story with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We'd like to thank all of our guests this morning. Until next time, I'm Megan Norman. This is Awareness.